everyone, especially to my fellow students who are watching this video. To those students and learners who are watching for eagerness of new knowledge and new learning, welcome for today's episode of Understanding Culture, Society, and Politics. In this episode, we will discuss the Module 1, the State and Non-State Institutions. As we discuss our modules lesson, don't forget to use and comment the hashtag UCSP Module 1 and hashtag SNSI for State and Non-State Institutions. But before we proceed to our proper discussions, here are the following objectives that we aim at the end of our lesson. A. Describe the different forms of state and non-state institutions. B. Differentiate the functions of state and non-state institutions. And C. Appraise the state and non-state institutions in relation to personal development and societal progress. I know that in our discussion, you will discover and learn something new, kaya halina't simulan ang ating talakayan.
For our startup, I want you to name and tell the function of the different institution that I am going to show. That's right, Department of Education or DepEd. This is a government agency that ensures quality education. Overseas Worker Welfare Administration or OWA. This is a government agency that looks after the welfare of the Filipinos working overseas. Armed Forces of the Philippines or AFP, a government agency that protects the state, territories, and boundaries. DPWH, Department of Public Works and Highways, a state agency that creates public infrastructures like school buildings, roads, and bridges. Next, DILG, Department of Interior and Local Government. This is a state institution that looks after the municipalities and barangays. I bet you know already the different institutions that I showed and mentioned earlier. If not, let me hear your thoughts in the comment section below.
There are different models of social institutions used in different countries nowadays. Most are inspired by the long history of their country, while others are being influenced by other nations. There are two major types of state or social institutions. One, the communist, which is based on command economy. Two, the democracy, which is based on capitalism or capitalist economy. Most communist countries are governed by the respective government alone. Private companies or individuals doing business is not allowed, and thus, people have no opportunity to choose because government decide what is best for its own citizens. A great example of a communist country is North Korea. While on the other hand, democracy is a government based on capitalism or capitalist economy. The government provides all the major industries but also allow private entities or individuals to produce goods and services to its citizens. People also are given much freedom to choose for themselves. Our country, the Philippines, is a great example of a democratic state.
Any state in the world formulates an own government to achieve the needs of its people. However, a most democratic society, the state government allows business individuals, corporation, and non-profit or proper organization to deliver good service to needs for citizenry. The government is based in providing the necessity of its people, allocating all resources that meet demand of its citizenry. But just like ordinary family, no matter how, always to make both ends meet always, some issues, the needs be worked upon.
That is why there is a non-state institutions or also known as non-state actors that are created to back up the government in filling the gap between the state and its people. The non-state institutions produce results to uplift the conditions of all people in the society. Banks, corporations, trade unions, cooperatives, development agencies, civil organizations, and transnational advocacy groups are the examples of non-state institutions that are created to help and lift the conditions of all sectors in the society.
Armed Forces of the Philippines or AFP, local government units or LGU, and Department of Education or DepEd are some of the example of the Philippine state institution in which it is organized and controlled by the government to fulfill the wishes of the Philippine state for a public service and control. In a democratic country, major industries must be under the control of the state like banks, petroleum, transportation, and communication because they are vital in the economy of a country. However, in recent years, the said industries are being sold to private entities to carry away the burden from its operation and maintenance. Today, private corporation headed by executive control the major industries in the country with a very minimum government supervision. Most of these are petroleum, examples, Shell, Caltex, and Petron. Telecommunication, examples, Smart, Globe, and PLDT. Transportation, examples, Cebu Pacific and Philippine Airlines.
The following are the non-state institutions under functions. Bank. It helps us to keep our money, avail different kind of loans, and exchange currency. Moreover, banks help the country by providing financial assistance to those entrepreneurs who wanted to create or expand their business. Example of banks are Metro Banks, Banks of the Philippine Islands, Rizal Commercial Banking Corporation. Corporation is owned by the group of individuals but has separate legal identity. Corporation provide job opportunities to the number of workers in the country and thus lessen the problem of poverty. Example of corporations is San Miguel Corporation, Accenture, and Shell. Trade unions look after the well-being of the workers and created to protect the labor force of the country. For workers are essential to the creation of goods and services for the citizenry. Example of trade unions is the Trade Union Congress of the Philippines. Cooperatives are made up of people with common interests who agree to work together. It is created to empower one another with a minimum help from the government. They make cheaper goods and services for individuals for an affordable access to commodities, loan, and services. Example of cooperatives are farmer cooperatives and teacher cooperatives.
Development agencies promote process by engaging in project, policy making, and dialogue. It works as a bank, provides financial assistance to important projects like the creation of bridges and connect one province to another road construction. Examples of development agencies are SEDA, USAID, JICA, and Asian Development Bank or ADB.
Civil organization provides facts about life, various realities to influence policymaking. It is created to expose the condition of the marginalized sectors of the society by using mass media. It platforms races critical to the government. Transnational advocacy group influence the government to take actions no matter commonly neglected. It institution promotes the raise awareness, advocates progress, and develop to a particular issue in a society. Example of transnational advocacy groups are Greenpeace and Human Rights Watch.
The government provide leadership, public services, national security, economic security, and economic assistance. It does a variety of works for the welfare of its own citizens. It makes decisions and get things done, especially in managing the economy and the conduct of foreign relations. The government also supervise the resolution of conflicting interests between its state and its people. Non-state institutions are helping the government in performing its functions by providing goods and services that the government cannot handle all the needs and wants of its own citizens, in which most of these products and services are provided by private entities or individuals. If the non-state institutions doesn't exist, the citizens will have difficulty in the means of access in other alternatives. For we all know that the government services are not enough to accommodate the needs of all the citizens. In general, the non-state institutions create services and opportunities to help the society progress.
To sum up for today's lesson, state institutions are agencies that are organized and controlled by the state government to fulfill the needs of its citizenry for public service and public control. The examples of state institutions are Department of Health, Department of Education, Armed Forces of the Philippines, and many more. The non-state institutions, or also known as non-state actors, are institutions that are created to back up the government in filling the gap between the state and its people. It helps to lift the conditions of all sectors in the society. The examples of non-state institutions are banks, corporations, trade unions, development agencies, cooperatives, civil organizations, and transnational advocacy groups. There are two major types of state or social institutions. One, the communist, which is based on command economy. It is governed by a respective government alone. Private companies or individuals doing business is not allowed, and thus, people have no opportunity to choose because government decide what is best for its own citizens. While on the other hand, the democracy is a government based on capitalism or capitalist economy. The government provide all the major industries but also allow private entities or individuals to produce goods and services for its people. Citizens also are given much freedom to choose for themselves. I hope that today's lesson gives you the understanding on the difference between the state and non-state institutions, especially in their importance and functions in our society. How was our discussion so far? Can you now differentiate the state and non-state institutions? Can you now tell their functions? I bet you can. With your paper and ballpen, let us see how far and effective our discussion by answering the following sets of questions that are being provided to you.